Hey fools, Mizzah Tee here with a special video detailing my impressions thus far on the Wii U and my feelings about the current state of Wii U's online features. Initially, this video was only going to focus on how I felt about Wii U's online features, but recent videos from fellow YouTubers prompted me to also give my impressions on the Wii U thus far. And so, before I get started, I must again preface this video with my special disclaimer. These are my opinions. That's right, fools, my opinions. And I realize there's a mathematical equation about opinions, and it goes like this. Opinions minus pi equals onions, and onions are known to make people cry. Please save your tears, fools. No one's opinions, whether you share them or not, should ever make you cry. My opinions are 100% mine and how I feel. And my opinions aren't sponsored by anyone, and I don't use them to protect Nintendo or shield them from harm. They are a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and I'm just little old Mizzah Tee. Me lying about the way I feel does in no way help me or Nintendo. These are my honest opinions. First, I'll start with online. In my youth, gaming has always been a shared family experience. Mizzah Tee has a large extended family who I grew up with and was very close with. Playing Nintendo together was a bonding ritual and helped me become a gamer. So while I love playing games solo, and there are many games like action games and RPGs that cater to solo player experiences, my most fun gaming experiences and memories were with other people, like gaming at the arcade or home with family and friends. Even when Dreamcast rolled around, and I was gaming on PC at the time, as well as consoles, I rarely played online. Gaming was either a personal experience or one I experienced locally with friends and family. And when I went to college and moved away from my family, gaming with my new college friends and playing Mario Kart Double Dash up to Wii Sports while getting drunk was some of the most fun gaming I ever had. Even after purchasing consoles like Xbox 360 and PS3, with all those online features, Mizzah Tee mostly ignored that stuff in favor of gaming with my friends. Now I did obviously play a lot of games online with fools I didn't know. They'd message me and we'd talk back and forth about games through messages, or we'd exchange Skype info so we could set up gaming sessions and so on. And for a gamer such as myself, that was good enough for me as far as gaming online. So I guess I missed the boat as far as certain gaming features like cross-game chat and cross-party chat, or chatting in a hat, and all that huggabaloo. So all those quote-unquote features never have and currently don't appeal to me whatsoever. So as far as your need for all that stuff to be in every game, and the belief that some of you others seem to have that every game needs online multiplayer, I just don't share. So it's hard for me to see Nintendo's so-called lack of online as negatively as you do, because for my taste, it's just fine. But with that said, I recognize that a lot of you fools need to chat online in video games. I don't understand it, but I guess I have to recognize it. And with that said, I hope you recognize why I don't get all bent out of shape and yell at Nintendo through my camera for something I just don't really care about or fully understand. So while I sympathize with you fools who feel such things are standard, I simply don't for my gaming tastes. So if you have a problem with Nintendo's online and want to rage in a video about it, I say have at it, hoss. Let out your frustrations. Even if I don't care, I'll fill out the survey and sign those petitions for you to get what you want. I only ask that you show me the same courtesy, that you don't disrespect me, call me crazy or delusional when I give you my honest opinion, that I don't care about all that stuff. Your onions are your onions, and my onions are mine. It's complete bullshit that you can accept my opinion on how I feel about it. And with that said, my only issues with online vary from game to game. In many instances, has to do with inviting friends to an online match. Games like Tron 2 and Monster Hunter prove that, as far as Wii U's online, the system is already capable of. From what I surmise, people want a universal system implemented by Nintendo. Okay. Do you want to also pay a yearly fee for that? Because Sony and Microsoft are charging for that now. I just find it funny that people are crying about a certain lack of online features for Nintendo's free service that they get in their premium paid service like Xbox Live. That's like getting mad at somebody for giving you a free Toyota Camry, but you want it to have the same luxuries as your neighbor who makes a monthly payment for his Lexus LS. Does that make any damn sense to you? Hell no, fools. Now, if you want to get upset that Nintendo doesn't offer a premium paid service so you can have all that, I can respect that. But wanting to get the same thing for free that you have to pay for on other systems is just utter bullshit. Now let's move on to the Virtual Console. Nintendo, this is where you done fucked up. You have a backlog of games that no company can touch. Virtual Console should be full featured by now. Once all those third-party deals and games fell through, you should have went full brow with the Virtual Console. Reimagined should have started spring 2012 when you realized third parties were starting to back away. I have a video coming called If I Were Nintendo that addresses the third-party situation and what Mizzah Tee would do about that now if I were Nintendo. So be looking for that. But back to the Virtual Console. You tout that Wind Waker HD was cheap to make and only took 6 months to make. If that's the case, it should have launched with the Wii U then. It should have been a day one bundle. Or how about a reworked version of Star Fox Assault in HD with 4-player online co-op? Fix the controls and allow for 4 players online co-op and multiplayer battles. That would have been cheap, something for the hardcore, and something you could have done quickly with a small team. That would have been awesome, allowing you to use the gamepad as your HUD displaying weapons, fuel, energy gauge, and your team. And you could talk to each team member separately by tapping their icon on the gamepad and seeing their stats and energy gauge. That's a game that would have made the gamepad shine. Offer it as a bundle with the headset and Pro Controller. I would have bought 3 of those bundles to give to family and friends. You were caught with your pants down. You had no contingency plan, Nintendo, and that's your own fault. GameCube games should have been ready by this summer 2013 for a stopgap for the game droughts, but they weren't. It may have been your strategy to stay out of the way of indies and third party so their games could breathe, but they have proven to you, Nintendo, for nearly 15 years that they can't be counted on. And again, I'll go way in on that in the If I Were Nintendo video coming soon. But sorry, Nintendo, you were in the driver's seat and you fell asleep at the wheel on that one, fools. And finally, I'm giving my assessment of Wii U's first year. And you'll have to excuse me if I get a little upset here, because I've come to learn something here in my short time on YouTube in the gaming community. And that is, you're not entitled to your own opinions. If your opinion don't line up with that of another, you'll get accused of lying to White Knight for Nintendo, being a corporate slave, or spewing damage control. I got a commentary coming on damage control too, fools. But really, no one here can accept the fact that you have different tastes than they do. As I explained previously about online, you must be crazy, fools, if you thought the Wii U had a good year and not terrible first year. You gotta be crazy, fools. You gotta be delusional or crazy in the head, they say. Was the Wii U first year good as far as Nintendo's concerned? No, they've already said as much. They said the Wii U failed to be a successful follow-up to the Wii. Was the Wii U first year good according to the gaming industry? Obviously no. The industry has been trolling Nintendo since at least February and making a buttload of cash off of doom and gloom articles. But lately, they can't seem to make up their mind if they like Wii U or not. Now, on to my opinion. Was the Wii U first year good for me? Yes. And here's a few reasons why. Fools. Now, don't come at me crying about ports. Why? Because that's right, I never played these games before Wii U. Now, don't come to me crying about graphics or frame rates. Because that's right, I don't play specs. I play games. And if the game runs well enough for me to enjoy it, then guess what? I enjoy it. That's pretty novel, huh, fools? My honest opinions. Those were my honest opinions, not onions. Now, I agree, there were droughts, but they didn't bother me as much. And here's why. What? You don't absolutely love those games too? You must be a lying Nintendo hater then, right? Right, fools? Hey, I'm just using your logic. Now, I agree that the Wii U should have launched with basic features that the Wii had. No argument there. And with that said, please try and find it in your heart to not argue with me when I give you my opinions on how I feel about something when I base it on my tastes. I can accept that the Wii U sucked and was terrible for you based on your tastes. I can accept that. I have no problem with that. But please understand that the answer to that is subjective, based on each individual, and it's not a provable fact. It's just my my opinion. Thank you, fools, for watching and listening to my onions. Oh yeah, one more thing. Play Nintendo, fools.